This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Hello there. First it was the electricity, now it's the water. In some parts there's too much, but it's foul-smelling and full of raw sewage. In just 24 hours, over 1 million Palestinians will be without clean drinking water. The Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak has called Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and warned him about the, quote, deteriorating humanitarian situation resulting from Israel's blockade in the Gaza Strip. And the Arab League's held an emergency meeting saying the situation is a war crime and has called on the UN Security Council to meet. For the latest, we go straight to Gaza City and our correspondent Jackie Rowland. Jackie.
Here's Kamal, night falling again in Gaza. It's almost 24 hours now since the main power plant shut down. And at the moment, according to the United Nations, Gaza only has half as much electricity as it actually needs. Some of that is being generated by diesel fuel generators. A bit of it in the south is coming in from Egypt, and also some of it is coming in from the grid, the Israeli grid. But here in Gaza City in particular, the effects of the cut of electricity is being broadly felt, not just in the lack of heating, electric lighting, the ability to cook, but also in terms of vital infrastructure, things like hospitals and the whole water system, as you were talking about, Kamal. So this evening in Gaza, let's take a look at how the situation is. The people of Ashoura awoke to a nasty surprise. Raw sewage flowing down the street and lapping at their doorsteps. It's a graphic consequence of the power cuts in Gaza. The nearby sewage pump station has no electricity, so the dirty water and excrement has nowhere to go except into the street. Dirty, filthy, stinking water, up to 20 centimeters deep in some places, flooding the streets, flooding the fields, flooding an orange grove. And the fear now is that if power isn't restored to the pump soon, the water could start to seep into people's houses, causing a real public health worry. This is where the sewage should be pumped to, a treatment plant a couple of kilometers away. Here too, the machinery stands motionless. No electricity means no way of purifying the dirty water, so it just stagnates.
50% of the wells don't have electricity nor fuel. And in the in a few hours and tomorrow, we'll have like around 80% of the wells will not run because we will not have electricity nor fuel in those plants.
For the sick in particular, everyday existence is becoming increasingly grim. This is Zahra Al-Nazli. A respiratory illness leaves her dependent on oxygen, but that too is kept out of Gaza by the Israeli embargo.
I am scared to run out of oxygen. I'm afraid that something will go wrong during the night or in the morning, and my machine will stop working. Sometimes I feel myself choking like a strangled chicken.
Hospitals in Gaza now have enough diesel to power their generators for a matter of hours, a day at most. Doctors will soon be faced with difficult choices. Which life-saving machines to switch off? Will it be these dialysis machines or maybe incubators at the Children's Hospital? It's an unenviable dilemma, making decisions over life and death. Yes, so as we were looking there, very grim situation in the hospital, and also a disgusting and filthy situation for people living close to that sewage pump station. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the situation with both sewage purification and the delivery of fresh water through the taps by talking to the director of the water utility here in Gaza, Munza Shublak. Mr. Shublak, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, we've seen already how sewage is starting to spill out into the streets of the Ashoura neighborhood. I saw it myself. Is this something that we're starting to see this problem repeating in other parts of Gaza?
Yeah, indeed. We are talking about central pump stations are in Gaza, in the northern area as well. And we started to discharge direct to the sea from the wastewater treatment plant. Raw sewage means we are no more treating the sewage, we are polluting the sea, and this drop of water will go to our neighbors in the northern area. This started yesterday, and tomorrow it will be more disasters.
So, I mean, you've got to the stage now that the only place you can send the dirty sewage is into the sea, polluting the Mediterranean Sea, and I imagine that the tides will be sweeping it north towards Israel. This, as you say, is not anymore an isolated problem for the Gaza Strip. This is becoming a problem for the environment, a problem possibly for the people of Israel as well.
Yeah, I would say that we will be lucky if we would be able to discharge this sewage to the sea. This will avoid that we split the sewage over the streets, and it will really hit people over their homes, means it's circulation of epidemics of diseases. So if we can do the same thing in other places, we will not be hesitating.
So pretty grim choices that you're faced with, either polluting the streets or polluting the seas. I mean, if we could talk as well about the provision of drinking water through the taps. How bad is it now? How many people in Gaza have not got access to running water?
In fact, since more than a week, we would say that there was not a continuous supply of electricity when it started. Water does not arrive to the people in the higher levels. It started like that. But after the shut-off of the power plant, it became more, I would say, delicate when 20% of the population yesterday, they were out of water supply. This will increase progressively because we haven't reserved until the next day, maybe tomorrow we'll reach 80%. Today we are talking about 40% of people, they haven't really minimum water on their taps.
So not only unhygienic situation, but also a lack of water for drinking, a lack of water for cooking. I mean, do you have any indication at all that diesel fuel or extra electricity may be supplied to you? Are you getting any indication at all from counterparts on the Israeli side about anything changing in this situation?
I would say we haven't such direct contact with the Israeli side so far. We had such contact before, after destruction of power plant. I would say this time it's more dangerous than the period after the destruction of the power plant. I'm talking about the energy power plant. Now, what we have as a contact, we are contacting the human rights offices such as Gisha, Israeli Gisha human rights offices, which they are working on this issue since, I would say, almost 2 months, when they had the court decision not to stop supplying Gaza with fuel. And regard this decision, it's obvious that the Ministry of Defense, Israeli Ministry of Defense, they took over this decision and they are preventing fuel to come to Gaza.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was Munda Shublak there from the water utility here in Gaza, explaining about how he's now having contact, or he has for some time been having contact with human rights organizations in Israel to try to get them to emphasize to the authorities in Israel just exactly what this means in bland human terms for people here in Gaza.
Although no sweeping measures have been taken, the Palestinian Authority is taking some action towards decreasing the magnitude of the human crisis in Gaza. President Mahmoud Abbas held an emergency meeting of the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. He called on the Israeli occupation to lift its blockade of Gaza and called on the Arab League to hold an emergency meeting at the delegation or ministerial levels. This is in addition to calling on the international quartet to save what is left of Gaza. Amani Abu Ghantash reports from Ramallah.
With every passing minute, Gaza sinks deeper into the darkness that has shadowed all aspects of life. The responsibility of the Palestinian Authority has multiplied as everyone watches for the positions or actions it will take to diminish the crisis that has reached its apex. The Palestinian Authority in Ramallah held an emergency meeting to discuss a course of action to avoid the likely catastrophic consequences in Gaza.
عقدت اجتماعا طارئا لبحث السبل التي يمكن اتخاذها إزاء ما يحدث في غزة على الأقل لتفادي نتائج وخيمة تبدو متوقعة.
كل شيء ممكن، يعني ممكن أن تنفجر الأمور.
Anything is possible. Things could blow up and get mixed up again, and Israel alone is responsible for what may happen.
الخطة الفلسطينية تتحرك على مستويات داخلية وخارجية، والبداية كانت بمطالبة الحكومة الإسرائيلية.
The Palestinian Authority is working internally and internationally, demanding that the Israeli government lift its lockdown on Gaza and calling on the Arab League to hold an emergency meeting. President Mahmoud Abbas sent urgent letters to the UN Secretary General and members of the International Quartet to immediately intervene to stop the tragedy in Gaza.
الدولية والمجتمع الدولي من أجل التحرك الفوري والسريع لوقف مأساة غزة.
We call on the Palestinian Authority to immediately stop the negotiations and demand that Israel stop the raids, the assassination, and the siege on Gaza, as well as stopping the settlement activities and the apartheid wall. We also call on the Palestinian Authority to turn to the Security Council and the National Assembly to impose punishment on Israel.
The recent developments in Gaza put the West Bank's Palestinian Authority in a tight position. The gap between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, who are controlling Gaza, is ever widening. As for the recommendations and negotiation attempts from the Annapolis Conference, they will most likely be put on the shelves, which would be a response to the continuous anger expressed on the Palestinian streets. Amani Abu Khantash, Dubai TV, Occupied Ramallah.
The catastrophe in Gaza forced the Arab League to face reality, and the permanent delegates are holding an emergency meeting in the League's headquarters in Cairo. They are discussing the developments in Gaza and an Arab mechanism to mobilize efforts, which could lead to a meeting at the foreign ministerial level next week. Civil movements preceded political action in the Palestinian territories and a number of Arab countries. After being divided by politics, the Palestinians in Ramallah and Gaza united in their rejection of the Israeli offensive. They took to the streets and lit candles, demanding for the removal of the blockade on Gaza. In the Jordanian capital of Amman, dozens gathered in front of the United Nations building, calling on Arab government's immediate intervention to stop the suffering of the people in Gaza. In the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, angry protesters took to the streets, burning tires and raising the Palestinian flag.
The international community today condemned Israel for shutting down crossings in and out of Gaza as a response to Palestinian-fired Qassam rocket attacks on southern communities. The Hamas leadership has warned of a humanitarian crisis at stake. However, Israel says the Palestinians are blowing the situation out of proportion. IBA's Leah Stern brings us the details.
It was the Hamas government that shut down the Palestinian power plant last night. Foreign Ministry spokesman Aryeh Mekel charged today that Hamas is attempting to create an artificial emergency in a bid to receive sympathy.
What we see in Gaza is a fabrication by Hamas. The fact is that 70% of the electricity to Gaza is provided by Israel through electricity cables, and this is not dependent at all on the supply of fuels.
Sderot residents said a lack of fuel is hardly comparable to living under a daily barrage of rocket fire.
2 days without electricity? It's not so bad. It's a very passive way of saying to Gaza, to the Hamas, this has to stop.
In addition to blaming Israel for the situation in Gaza, Hamas leaders put the blame on the rival Fatah movement. Lawmaker Mustafa Barghouti accused Fatah because it has not denounced IDF operations in the area. He urged Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to call off peace talks with Israel. Meanwhile, 10 human rights organizations asked the High Court of Justice to issue a temporary order to expand the quantity of industrial diesel fuel shipped into the Gaza Strip. United Nations officials and the European community members also called on Israel to allow for the immediate supply of fuel and medicine to the Gaza Strip. According to UNRWA sources, the outages are affecting hospitals, sewage works, and refrigerators.
600,000 people in Gaza City are without electricity and will be until the power plant can resume its operation. Just adds more to the misery of ordinary, decent people.
Vice Premier Chaim Ramon said that the Israeli decision to reduce fuel supplies may be working since the number of rockets fired from Gaza has dropped considerably. Still, the onslaught continues. Palestinians today fired a Qassam at the western Negev. This is Leah Stern for IBA News.
How do the Palestinian refugees in Syria respond to the offer made by the President of the White House to compensate them in exchange for their homeland, their commitment, their identity, and their olive trees, robbed by strangers while the world was asleep?
I am from the Shajara in Tiberias. All our land went to the Jews, but we won't give up our right to it. We want to return to our homeland, our country, and our olive trees. It's more precious than gold. And our martyrs, we salute every one of them, because everything they did was for their homeland. This is why we will not give up our right to return, never. We will not give up one grain of sand from our land.
The right of return is not only a right, it is the duty of each Palestinian to return to his land, to keep it from becoming the home of people other than Arabs and Palestinians. Giving up this right is an Arab and Palestinian withdrawal of principles that cannot be accepted. It oppresses Palestinian people everywhere. We will not accept any compensation because a person does not sell his homeland for any price.
Palestine, my beloved, Palestine, my beloved, how can I fall asleep with arrows in my eyes? The fire from our parting burns my ribs, and the arrows in my eyes turn into swords. By the force of my revolt and the men of my nation, we will make our enemy taste the flames. Palestine, my beloved, how can I forget that your soil is of my blood and bone? If we sleep without hearing your call, then sinful is our living. Until the day of judgment, the print of shame will remain, lest the free in our nation liberate our homeland. Peace on earth and all people.
We refuse to let go of one grain of sand in Palestine. We refuse for the West Bank or the Palestinian Authority to negotiate our rights to return. We accept compensation for all the losses we incurred, compensation for our suffering, and the tragedy we lived through. But this compensation is not in exchange for our return to Palestine. We accept nothing but to return to Palestine no matter what.
أهلا بكم من جديد. في ختام محادثات في موسكو مع نظيرها الروسي سيرجي لافروف دعت وزيرة الخارجية.
The Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipsi Livni met with her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov and called on Russia to take a firm stance towards Iran's nuclear program. In a joint press conference, Livni said that Russia and Israel have a mutual understanding that Iran must not develop nuclear weapons and warned that the Russian nuclear fuel that is being transported to Iran is to be used for military objectives. This comes as Iran announced that the third shipment of Russian nuclear fuel has arrived to the Iranian Bushehr nuclear facility, which is being built in southern Iran.
There has been a significant development in the Iranian-Israeli relationship in the past years, especially with the bilateral cooperation. However, Moscow and Tel Aviv still differ on the Iranian nuclear program, as was evident in the latest talks between Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni and her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Israel suggested that Moscow enforce strict sanctions against Iran to prevent it from developing uranium enrichment programs. What's interesting is that Livni avoided talking about the use of military force to resolve Iran's nuclear problem. Russian political experts said that this is an important change in the Israeli position towards Iran's nuclear program.
Israel agrees with the international community that Iran must not have nuclear weapons. We call for working jointly to resolve this problem.
The Russian position towards Tehran has not changed. The Russian foreign minister stressed the importance of resolving the Iranian nuclear crisis in accordance with the recommendations of the International Atomic Energy Agency.
We must strengthen the role of the international community in resolving the Iranian problem in accordance to the recommendations that were made by the International Atomic Energy Agency and Security Council resolutions. It is important to avoid behaving unilaterally when trying to resolve this problem.
It is worth mentioning that the difference between the Russian and Israeli positions towards Iran's nuclear file is not new. Israel insists that Iran's objective is to develop a nuclear military program, but Moscow believes that Iran does not have the necessary capabilities to develop nuclear weapons. It is true that bilateral cooperation between Russia and Tel Aviv has increased. Still, the two countries differ greatly on many issues. For Al Madar program, Amjad Darwish, Abu Dhabi Channel, Moscow.
A hand grenade explosion at a car parking area on a Beirut street damaged a number of cars which were parked there, including the car of the Lebanese assistant military prosecutor, Judge Ahmed Awaidat, and the car of the sister of General Mustafa Hamdan, who was arrested in the investigation of the assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri. This comes after a series of security breaches in Lebanon, the latest of which targeted 2 U.S. embassy cars in a convoy in Lebanon.
The explosion went off at 6:15. We heard the news and came to make sure our stores were okay. Thank God, no store in the area was damaged by the explosion. It was a civilian car.
For more details, we're joined by our Al Arabiya correspondent, Rula Abu Shakra from Beirut. Rula, do you have any new information about this incident?
The new information was announced by the Department of Guidance, which stated that the explosion went off at 6:15 local time on Mosaic Street, which is known as a commercial street in Beirut. As you indicated, the explosion targeted the assistant military prosecutor, Judge Ahmed Awaidat. His car was partially damaged. Meanwhile, another car was completely burned. That car belonged to the sister of General Mustafa Hamdan, who's been arrested by the Lebanese authorities over the assassination of former Prime Minister al-Hariri. There is no information about whether the explosion is related to specific cases that Awaidat is or was handling. However, an informed political source said that it may be that this explosion has something to do with the cases that Awaidat has dealt with from his position, such as the file of Fatah al-Islam.
من خلال موقعه كملف فتح الإسلام ولكن الملفت في هذا الانفجار.
However, what is significant about this explosion is that it comes about 2 days after some unknown assailants burned the car of Aziz al-Matni, a journalist and editor of the Anba newspaper, which is affiliated with the Progressive Socialist Party. Today, there were continued reactions and condemnations of the burning of Matni's car. This indicates that Lebanon is living in a state of security vulnerability amidst an atmosphere of political uncertainty.
في ظل هذه الأجواء السياسية المشحونة.
Rula, should we pay attention to the fact that these two cars of these two people were parked next to one another in the same spot?
يعني معلومات أشارت لنا إلى أن شقيقة حمدان تسكن في المبنى نفسه الذي يسكن فيه عويدات.
We got information that Hamdan's sister lives in the same building that Awaidat lives in. Perhaps for this reason, the two cars were parked next to one another and that there are no links between the two. Of course, Awaidat and Hamdan come from the village of Ishin in the Karaoub region in the Lebanese mountains. However, sources refuse to make any links between the two cars that were parked on the street.
Did anyone make any statements, including Awaidat or anyone else for that matter?
No, until now there have been no statements, only what I referred to earlier regarding a statement by the Guidance Department which clarified the details of this incident.
Rula Abu Shakra, Al Arabiya correspondent in Beirut, thank you very much. The Iraqi security forces carried out a raid on the stronghold of Ahmed bin Hassan Yemeni's group in the city of Nasiriyah. The group believed to be responsible for several incidents in the cities of Basra and Nasiriyah. In a statement to Al Arabiya, the Basra police chief said that they have information confirming that the head of the group, Ahmed bin Hassan Yemeni, is living in Basra.
من بؤرة إرهابية كانت تأوي العشرات من أنصار أحمد بن حسن اليماني في الناصرية.
This is what is left of a terrorist cell in Nasiriyah where dozens of supporters of Ahmed bin Hassan Yemeni were either killed or arrested. This news comes after the Babel police and security forces carried out a premeditated offensive in Nasiriyah where dozens of members of the radical group were killed, wounded, or arrested. The radical group was responsible for much of the violence in the cities of Basra and Nasiriyah. The mission of the Iraqi forces was not easy as they pursued fleeing armed fighters into residential neighborhoods. In addition, the Iraqi forces destroyed the group's hideout, which was staged amidst the homes of the residents. The Iraqi police uncovered a large cache of weapons, ammunition, and cars that were used in the group's operations. Meanwhile, the residents in Nasiriyah, which is located in the heart of southern Iraq and known as the capital of the civilization of the south, expressed rage over the incidents that have torn their community. A group of armed fighters opened fire on a funeral procession for one of the religious figures in Nasiriyah. In addition, the group carried out raids on several local government buildings and held banners calling for the creation of an Islamic rule under the leadership of Yemeni and Jinsama. Dozens of civilians were killed in these incidents. As the showdown continues to escalate among rival Shiite groups, the Iraqi forces tried to reclaim control in Nasiriyah, where several areas have fallen in the hands of Yemeni or Jinsama groups. No one knows for sure the type of support or affiliation many of these groups are receiving. However, the preliminary investigation confirmed that the nature of the attacks carried out by these groups and that of Al-Qaeda are somewhat similar and comes in the context of the bloody violence in Iraq.
يكاد يتكرر وينحصر في دوامة العنف في العراق.
يزدحم تقويم الشيعي بمناسبات دينية ترافق الكثير منها.
Each year, Iraqi Shiite sects celebrate several religious occasions. Members of the Shiite faith hold ceremonies and prayers in observance of dozens of religious holidays. After 3 decades of the ban on Shiite holidays in Iraq, the Shiites are now allowed to celebrate the more than 30 religious holidays, which often affect schools and work.
يوم عاشوراء هو قمة هرم المناسبات الشيعية.
Ashoura is at the top of the Shiite holiday pyramid, which includes 30 religious occasions a year. Each holiday commemorates the birth or death of a member of the ancestry of the noble prophet. In addition, each holiday has its unique set of guidelines and standards, depending on the occasion and its effect on the followers of the Shiite faith.
It is totally left to the believers, whether or not they want to take a chance and come to the Hussein and mark this occasion.
Both supporters and opponents of the former Iraqi regime know that banning Shiite holidays was a big mistake. Many also know that the ban on Shiite holidays by the former regime was not sectarian-based, but rather due to the fear of public congregations. Having said that, what prompted these millions of people to come out today and celebrate and offer their sacrifice? The former regime has fallen, and with it, the suppressed feelings of the Shiites has been unleashed like an erupted volcano. In another development, the religious occasions marked by the Shiites have added a further burden on law enforcement agencies in the country, where tragic incidents are still fresh in the collective memory. Moreover, the holidays are causing frequent closure of schools and government institutions.
The closure of schools during these holidays are not a problem considering the great occasion of Hussein, peace be upon him.
Freedom is a new Iraqi principle guaranteed by the Constitution and enhanced in 18 of its articles. The Iraqis believe that freedom is easily implemented once the bans and anarchy are removed from society. Lubna Haddad, Al Arabiya.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.